Good morning and welcome to the June edition of The Road To. I'm Patti Morrissey, your host/hostess, and I am here with two of our regulars and one of our House of Delegates, esteemed House of Delegates member, and we will introduce now, starting with Jim Parmelee on my right.
On your right or on your left, depending on which way you're sitting, I guess. I'm Jim Parmelee. I run the Northern Virginia Republican PAC, Republicans United for Tax Relief also, and I host a few shows on this and some other stations.
Yes, for many years.
Yep, many years.
And to my further left, John Flannery.
Further left.
To the extreme left.
Well, when Jim can't figure out whether he's right or left, we know this is going to be a strange meeting. Yes, I'm John Flannery, and I'm a recovering federal prosecutor, and I've been active in politics probably since I was 7 years old. And I'm an elected member of the Loudoun County Soil and Conservation District. And I think we're here at a particularly dangerous time in our nation's history. And I do think that we can make America great again if we just get rid of Mr. Trump.
That's okay. We'll get into the specifics of that. Delegate John Bell is here from the 87th. And you might want to tell us how your territory spans, and that way if people don't know that you're their delegate, they will know.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I represent the 87th District, very proud to do that. It's mainly a Loudoun County district. It starts in Sterling and goes along the western side of Route 28 all the way over to South Riding, which is the neighborhood I live in, the western side of South Riding, and then heads all the way from there out to Aldi and Haymarket. I have 3 Haymarket precincts and 21 Loudoun County precincts. Ashburn, part of that area, Loudoun Valley Estates, Brambleton. I have a good portion of both those neighborhoods in my district. So it's a very fast growth district. A lot of people commuting, lots of families with young children, and those are issues that pretty much dominate what's important in my district, as I think it is for many people in Northern Virginia with tough commutes and often both parents working and striving to keep all the balls up in the air and not let anything bounce on the ground.
Yep, sounds good. Good summary. So we are going to, we were just talking about how hardly anything's happened in the last month.
Hardly, every day.
And this is really the road to Richmond this year because it's a Virginia election year. But we thought we'd start off with a little bit of a discussion about some of the important issues that have happened in the last few weeks. And I'm going to leave it up to you guys to pick out what you think is the most sort of important political event, or you can pick 2 if you need to, of the last month since our last show, and just let you go with that since there's a lot to choose from. Jim, you want to start?
Well, I'm going to go with one that probably is not the one in the front of everybody's mind, but is incredibly important to our country. We shot down a missile with a missile, trying to hurry up the process to be able to defend against North Korean nuclear missiles. And I think that there are a lot of things that get more attention, a lot of things that we're all focused on a 5-second news cycle, it seems. But in terms of the North Koreans have been building missiles, have been building nuclear weapons, and intend to potentially shoot them at us. So that test was very important, and they've got and I think the media needs to cover that a little bit more.
What's interesting about that, though, is we basically told them they were never going to get that far. So it's kind of a
multiple presidents
plan B going on here.
Multiple presidents have told them that. And I'm not even going to blame President Obama entirely for it, although he had the last 8-year shift on this. But he had 8 years to try to slow things down. It didn't work. I do think that President Trump's pushing of China on this and stepping up some of the military activities may convince the Chinese that we're serious. If the Chinese do not want missile defense sites built rapidly in their neighborhood, then they can simply stop the North Koreans from having. It's up to them. I mean, they can shut the border. They can. They provided a lot of the materials. So the Chinese are largely responsible for the North Koreans' progress in this. So they need to step in and stop it. And if they don't, they probably, thanks to President Trump, will find a lot of missile defense batteries right in their neighborhood, which they don't want. A lot more U.S. ships in their neighborhood, which they do not want. And hey, we have no choice. There's an armed and dangerous country that has threatened to shoot nuclear missiles at us. So we have absolutely no reason not to be there. If the Chinese do not like it, they know exactly what they need to do, and I would hope that they wouldn't want a nuclear North Korea that they can't, that could turn against them at some point too.
Jim, thank you for bringing that up, because that's a really, really serious, precarious situation. And you're right, it's hard to focus on those really important things when we've got constant drama. John, would you like to?
That is the most bizarre interpretation of our national policy I've ever heard. We have spent years trying to avoid exactly the kind of conflict that this incompetent, abusive, autocratic president has made his policy. If we do believe that Korea is the problem, we shouldn't be saber-rattling. Excuse me. If we do believe that Korea is the problem, we shouldn't be saber-rattling and at the same time dissing every one of our allies throughout Europe and NATO and putting them down and showing disrespect for them and abusing them as they're opening the new NATO headquarters. How do we think that's a good policy? Do we need nobody to deal with North Korea? Do we really think we're going to put in silos all around North Korea in time for them to do anything to South Korea? And why do we think that China should do anything? Because they're in a very compromised position and have basically said what they can't do. So, but that's only part of it. We have a president that I'm not sure before he was elected could tell you where some of these important sites are on a map of the world. And he goes to Europe, and on the one hand, he makes an alliance with Saudi Arabia and gives them the money for weapons that perhaps will be turned on us. And then he walks across the continent and he disses the people who'd be our allies to either deal with Iran or to protect us when those weapons are turned against us. And that's an international military policy? I don't think so.
John,
this is compounded, please, no. Okay. This is compounded by the fact that we had Flynn, who was our national security advisor, who has corrupt relationships and conflicts he conceals and has been fired from office. And then because Comey investigates that, he's fired from office, and he may or may not testify this week because of executive privilege. We have an administration engulfed in corruption and the kind of cronyism he claimed he was going to drain the swamp of. And at the same time, he creates this existential problem for the world by refusing to take seriously what he calls a hoax, which is global warming. And he can't see it though. Huge ice flows melt. Shores are engulfed in water. Even here in Virginia, if you go to the southeast, there's water in the streets because of the rising waters along the east coast from the Atlantic. So when we have a president who knows so little and is so corrupt and is so autocratic and is so unpredictable, how do we expect to have leadership? The nation is at risk until this man is removed from office. Whether he resigns, he's prosecuted, he's impeached, which is difficult in this because of the composition of the House and the Senate. So in a way, you made a joke about it because it's a scary kind of hysterical thing. Every day we have something happening. I mean, today the lead story may be whether the president will try to prevent Comey from testifying about the president trying to shut him down. And we don't see any solace coming from the Republicans in Virginia. We see no profile in the entire Senate to come forward and to say, Mr. President, we want to know what you knew and when you knew it. We don't have any of that. The system is broken down, and so the remedies are three. One, protest. Two, the leaks that we have that some condemn are the only way we know what's really going on. And finally, the courts, whether it be the Muslim ban or it be the prosecution by Mueller. So I'm sorry, but that's my
John kind of covered the world.
Just a question, a serious, absolutely serious question. I just want to know what you think. The North Koreans have just dropped a missile, I guess, into the Sea of Japan. They are close to being able to drop a nuclear weapon on Tokyo, and then down the line Hawaii, and then down the line the United States. What would President? What would you do as president right now?
You don't saber rattle forever. You don't put your finger. Well, you make threats and you don't do it. The problem with this Mr. Trump is he's a coward. He backs down every time, and they know it. For instance, I'm going to take this to the Supreme Court on the first series of issues of the Muslim ban. He backs down. I'm going to get out of NAFTA. He backs down. So he probably felt he had to take this position on the Paris
Guys,
Accords.
I want our retired Air Force officer
what would he do?
to talk to this issue because
he's glad he's in the
I know
reserve.
he's churning here. Okay, John.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is ironically, I was on the program before and we talked about North Korea, and it's a major problem. I agree, saber rattling isn't the answer. Frankly, I think cutting the State Department and cutting our diplomatic ties around the world is hurting us. And I also believe that President Trump's offensive comments to the Australian Prime Minister, a key person in that region of the world who can be part of the solution, is the wrong move. I've been to North Korea in the DMZ. I've been in the tunnels underneath the DMZ, and
They're lovely places.
Yeah, we have to be very careful as we approach this. I served for almost 4 years at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa, which is one of the primary responses to North Korea. And the problem, while we definitely need to keep North Korea from getting a nuclear weapon, and frankly that might involve extreme actions, I do agree that China needs to be the lead on this. I think Japan needs to play a large role because they are probably the most at risk. The other issue is we cannot be careless as we approach this, and I believe that some of President Trump's comments have been careless. Because if we were to unleash a conventional war, every scenario shows hundreds of thousands in Seoul will die. Because the conventional weapons lined on the border between North and South Korea, it will be catastrophic. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't take action, but we need to be very careful, deliberate when we do this. And frankly, I think that some of President Trump's comments and lack of diplomacy, cuts in the State Department, have only put us, have escalated something to a point that it should not be escalated.
But what would you now? Where you are now, we've had 8 years. President Obama could do whatever he wants with the State Department. Whatever he did didn't work.
What do you
President
mean
Trump.
by that?
Yeah, well, I would
There's
argue,
a lot
the
going
State,
on.
First of all, I don't know if the State Department.
I mean, by any measure, I would argue that what President Obama
you
did
mean
was
with
work much better than
North
President
Korea, I
Trump,
got you.
because
Yeah.
President Trump has put us to the point of crisis. We were not at that point during President Obama's administration.
Well, I don't know what the State Department could have done in the last 8 years when you have a guy
20 years.
who is or whatever who is committed to getting nuclear weapons and being aided by China and others. But now that President Obama had 8 years to take a shot at it. Now you got President Trump. If you were president today, based on what President Trump has been handed to by his predecessor, what would you do about it?
Well, I think the best thing to do, frankly, again, is to work through diplomatic channels. And I believe China and Japan and others in the region, Australia, have a vested interest in this and would partner with us if we approach them the right way. We could literally cut off North Korea. And we know if we look at the satellite images of lights at night, there's very few places in North Korea that even have power. And we also know that much of the population there is starving. Unfortunately, this
The
would
leadership
cause...
doesn't care about that.
They
right?
don't, but when it hits them, they will. And if we all partner together, we can really choke them. And I think there's the other thing is we have to work through diplomatic channels. I mean, normally
But it
when we
hasn't
try,
worked, right?
well, we haven't aggressively gone to overthrow who's there. And I think that's
Obama
something we
had
need
8
to
years
do.
to try.
Okay, guys.
I would disagree.
I love the issue of
did.
North Korea, but let's move on to some things that are a little more closer to home. And I'm going to start with John this time in terms of some of the economic issues swirling around in Virginia in terms of like kind of moving out of this phase of very slow growth. Are there issues that you think should be addressed by the candidates running for office this fall?
Well, some of them are addressing them. I mean, we've had this question about how do we really care about our people? And so one issue is, don't we care that they have decent medical attention? And we could take care of very many of Virginia's citizens if we supported Medicaid, and we don't. And that's entirely a Republican issue in terms of being on the wrong side of it, the dystopic view.
Could you explain that to the viewers a little bit more in terms of how the Medicaid aspect of the Affordable Health Care Act was not taken advantage of?
Well, the simple way to describe it is we have already paid the funds that would provide medical care for people in certain income brackets, but the General Assembly has to decide to do that, and the General Assembly has refused to do that. This gentleman excluded from that group I believe you supported it when you had the opportunity.
Yeah, if I can jump in on that. I mean, well, first, we've never had a vote because it's never made it out of committee to get a vote on it.
Right.
And frankly, I think expanding Medicaid is the biggest no-brainer we've ever had because, I mean, it's $5-6 million a day of revenue we're missing in Virginia. Our rural hospitals in Virginia are frankly in trouble, and many of them are going to go under if they don't get that funding. There's a couple heartbreaking aspects of not expanding that really hit home for me. We have roughly 900 senior citizens on a wait list for home health care. If we don't expand, we're capped on how many we can have. Expanding will give more people the chance to get home health care. Most of the people on that waiting list will never get home health care. What happens? They're then forced to go to nursing homes, which is covered. It costs the taxpayers
a lot more expensive.
50, 60 grand more a year.
Yeah.
So it's fiscally not responsible. It's morally, I think, wrong. And also, we're really killing the independence of people, which cuts their lifespan down. We're also not creating jobs. If we did that, we'd get jobs. You know, the arguments against it, well, it's going to cost us so much more money in the long term. I mean, if someone goes into the emergency room now, they don't have insurance, Virginia pays 50%, federal government pays 50%, and that's of what the hospital has already written off, the portion they haven't written off. Now, if we expand for the first 4 years, federal government pays 100%. That's way better than 50%. And then every year after, 90%. So
only for a few years, though.
Actually,
and then it drops dramatically and it breaks the budget.
That is wrong.
No, it's absolutely correct.
No, it's
well,
4
that was
years.
the
4 years for
assumption that
100.
people
4
would be
years,
on,
100%,
right?
90% forever, and that argument was brought up by the
And then
Republicans.
drops.
No, it doesn't drop ever. That's wrong.
Why do you think that?
Well, first off, it's 90% forever. That's the way the Affordable Care Act is written. And the Virginia hospitals actually got together and said, look, if that's the reason why you're not expanding, we'll cover the other portion so Virginia's never on the hook for it. Because 400,000 additional insured people give us enough revenue to cover that. And we never got a vote on that bill. That was what was offered last year. So Virginia would have never been on the hook.
That's not going to, I spent 2 terms.
Plus, we could always opt out if a commitment's not met.
I spent 2 4-year terms on the state Medicaid board, and I have seen some of the problems that we've had. And if we expand the program without the revenue to continue the expansion, you can cause a lot of damage to folks who truly need health care by expanding a program to where it breaks without the appropriate funding. And I think it's unwise to go along with this potential 90% thing that's going to disappear relatively shortly and then leave the
How can you say it's potential when other states around us, Maryland, West Virginia, are getting that money? I mean, it's not potential for them, it's real.
They're getting
real.
it today.
They're getting it now.
They're getting it today, but in 2 or 3 years,
so then
when the budget is broken.
you would actually uninsure 400,000. These are working Virginians.
No one's being uninsured.
Yes, they are. There's 400,000 working
being
Virginians that don't have insurance today that would have it, and you're not providing care for them. You're also going to let the rural hospitals go under, or you're going to have to put more money into that.
And you want truly poor people who need health care to have their health care taken away from them because you recklessly, not
well,
you
first off, nobody's going to lose their health care.
You've recklessly expanded a program to an unsustainable level that then crashes.
That is absolutely
assumption.
Wrong. It's based on a false assumption.
Actually, Obamacare is crashing around the country
The only reason Obamacare,
and
actually,
Medicaid would be next if it's left up to what you guys are wanting.
The states that actually have exchanges, Obamacare in many cases has reduced the cost of health care. The states that are having trouble, the states, the ones that they're not, they never expanded properly, or President Trump is withholding payments. He's also withholding money that would sign up more people, which frankly, the more healthy people, the better. He's doing that to intentionally make the program
No, he's not to crash.
No, he is absolutely sabotaging the program.
You guys are crashing, what I mean is you guys are crashing the program. You set up Obamacare as a program that was predetermined to crash in the next president's term so that you would have to either pour in a ton of money and do all sorts of things. If Obamacare is such a great program, then why are you counting on President Trump to fix it? I thought it was a great thing sprung from the mind of President Obama. Why would it need fixing by somebody who you guys, or at least John,
actually, you know
revile?
what the thing that drives me crazy about this conversation is we set up. We did, okay, and I have no opinions because I'm the moderator, but we used the Republican model when I worked on the Hill for a couple of Republicans. We used the Republican model.
Romney.
The Romney model built on the private insurers willingly being motivated to provide for this pooled group of people who are uninsured. But then we're blaming the government for the premiums going up when it's the insurance company setting the premiums. But anyway, I think we should move on.
Let me say one friendly thing.
Hold it. They're setting the
friendly
premiums.
thing.
They're saying that's like blaming a baseball player for not getting 5 strikes. You have the rules that Obama set up.
You misunderstand how the game is played.
The insurers are. I understand. The game is
5
failing.
strikes. 5 strikes.
That's right.
Yeah,
My point is, she's saying, why are the insurers having problems? And I'm saying that they're operating under the same rules. If you had baseball players operating under different rules, the game of baseball would be different.
Well, I would change the rules
That's
entirely and
tautological.
make them.
That doesn't tell us anything.
The current healthcare rules are illogical in many cases, and they are leading to the destruction of Obamacare.
If you have a president, change the rules. You have a president running it down, it will run down. That's what happens. And the friendly remark, change the rules and we'll get a different outcome. Yes, let's destroy it.
We could change the rules. Would you like to let people offer health insurance across borders? We could change the rules.
Yeah.
We're all in favor of that.
Profit.
Well, can I add one thing on this? I mean, if all the states had the same tort laws and the same rules, certainly that could be a savings. And if that were all on a level playing field, I think it's a good idea and we should do it. The one thing that, you said everybody loved Obamacare. There are many things about Obamacare I didn't like.
Everybody hated Obamacare. A lot of people hated it.
I didn't hate it. I mean, I think it was a first step. And there's things we can do to improve it. The thing that I wish we'd work on now would be lowering administrative cost, because our administrative cost is well over 20%. Japan's at 1%. They complain every year. Germany's at 3%. England's around 5%. We need to lower that cost, because if we want to save money on healthcare, that's where we should tackle.
And I have Kaiser,
we haven't done that.
I mean,
the Republican plan, which I think in the House was invented over a pizza party, it didn't go to there at all. I mean, frankly, it didn't even attack the biggest problems. What it did is it really uninsured most people. And almost anybody over 25 is going to have a pre-existing condition, and then they're going to go in a high-risk pool. And I can tell you in Virginia, there's no money to fund that high-risk pool.
If you stay under the plan, if you have under the Republicans' plan, I believe, if you have insurance and you don't let it drop, if you keep the insurance, you don't fall into those high-risk pools. It's only folks who do not qualify for Medicaid, who do not have employer-provided insurance, and who have let their insurance drop, and then later, if they become sick, want to get insurance. And then there's a premium increase at the beginning. So it's not as drastic as you think.
And still, there are 23 million more people who will not be covered.
That number is actually incorrect.
I'm grinding my...
They dropped it to 22, and that includes all the people who have voluntarily said, currently, I'm not going to sign up for Obamacare because it's too expensive and doesn't cover enough. I'm going to pay the penalty. So we're covering that 22 million, which is a fake number to begin with. That is dramatically reduced.
Could I just
by the people who don't have it,
one friendly remark?
Okay, and then we got to move on.
My one friendly remark is the advantage of having John here, which is true of any advocate who has to be working with the problem day to day and is not doing talking points, but has to talk about what is actually happening and going on, in this case in Medicaid.
John, I was on the Medicaid board for
yes, you were on the Medicaid board before
this
issue. You have not been involved in this issue, the one that covers 400,000 people.
Appointing me.
I think that was a wise non-appointment. As much as I love you, I think that was a good decision.
All right,
based
guys,
on what you say here.
We're going to pivot, a big pivot.
Pivot, okay. I hate that term.
We're going to pivot to education. And I think our producer would like us to talk about education in the context of Virginia and what maybe some of the candidates should be doing, either higher ed, preschool, the various proposals that have been floating out there that haven't really happened yet.
Well, let's start with our delegate here. What does he think?
Well, there's a couple things that I'll talk about on that. First, there's been a lot of talk of candidates of universal pre-K.
Yes.
I'm an advocate, but before that, I'd like to have universal full-day kindergarten, because we actually still have 3 counties, and my primary district county is Loudoun, which doesn't have full-day kindergarten. And then we also have Chesapeake, Virginia Beach. Virginia Beach just voted to go to full-day kindergarten. So I believe we need to make full-day kindergarten the standard first.
What do you say to some of the studies that have shown that it doesn't really increase at that age, having that does not really increase.
You don't want a
long-term
summary.
education.
Actually, I looked at the studies. There are a number of studies on this, and frankly, some of them have limited data points on both sides because there hasn't been a lot of in-depth studies on this. But the more recent studies that have more track records show a dramatic increase in performance for children, particularly at-risk children. One of the committees I serve on, that we started last year, is the School Readiness Committee. And we're actually looking at a lot of that, not necessarily at kindergarten, but preschool. And what is preschool versus daycare? What's the difference? And if someone puts a shingle up on their facility saying it's preschool, what is a parent really getting? Because right now there's no standards for what they're getting. We're not going to mandate, hey, you have to do this, but we're going to probably go in a direction of a few things. One, if you have that preschool up, what are your children really being educated? Because I think that's a consumer advocate thing where parents should know. And then they should know that there's certain curriculum requirements, also certain qualifications for those who are providing the service. And then the other thing is try to make education stackable, where if you are a pre-K teacher and you want to become a regular full certified teacher, then that education would be stackable with what you get. Right now, it's not. You have to start over. So that keeps many people in those buckets and they never advance.
Yeah.
It's just too difficult.
I know some people like that.
It's a real problem.
And this is all optional, right? I mean,
It's
like
all
if you're
optional.
a stay-home parent and you want to keep your kid home, you don't have to send them. This is an opportunity for people if they work. I know when my girls were preschool, it was extremely expensive to have them in programs.
Yeah, absolutely
that were
optional.
educational.
And also to clarify, a full day kindergarten, I believe parents should also be able to choose half day if they want that. Because some children, and the parents know best, that their children might be better off in a half day program. Most places that
They
offer
may
both.
want to be with them a little more.
Well,
They
since
might.
we're talking about choice, what do you think about allowing children in underperforming school districts to have the choice to go to other districts?
If it doesn't take money out of public schools, I'm in favor of that. And frankly, in Loudoun County, this is one thing we could do to give more children full-day kindergarten. We have full-day kindergarten in at-risk neighborhoods, and there's a lottery system in other places. I would like parents to be able to, if there's an opening in a full-day school that's outside of their district, allow them to take their child there. They would have to be responsible for transportation and other things, but that would allow full-day kindergarten for that child.
But would you support vouchers? So not
No.
even, what you would do is say you have X, I don't know what the current amount in Loudoun is, but say X amount of dollars per student that the taxpayers are paying for per student. You take that amount of money, maybe less, maybe take that less 2,000, so the school gets to keep some of it, and then give that as a voucher to the parents in the underperforming schools to send their kids and that money to wherever they want.
I would not be in favor of that because, frankly, I'm in favor. It's really a charter school argument. If it's a charter school run by the public schools and every child has the ability to get into it, that's something I'd be supportive of. If it's a charter school that's a private school that has a voucher as you described, I think the stats on that are largely misused because people often say all these charter schools outperform public schools. Well, they cherry pick the students who get to go there. And if we were to do that, we would dramatically underperform our public schools because we have infrastructure commitments and we built schools. And in Loudoun County and frankly Northern Virginia as a whole, we have excellent public schools. Our graduation rates are extremely high. 95% of the children are going to four-year colleges. We have great schools.
That's amazing.
These are some of the best in the country. But
that doesn't mean we shouldn't allow. What if students
we
in
do
another
allow
county
if a
wanted
parent,
to
if
go
a parent
to
wants to send their
different
child to a
schools?
private school on their own dime, they're more than welcome to
And
do that.
not all schools in Fairfax County are equal, and the competition amongst the schools would make potentially all the schools better.
If you're talking about public school open enrollment, where a child could go from one public school to the other, I'm in favor of that as capacity allows. Right now we have at Rock Ridge High School, which is only 3 years old. They actually have a dual enrollment program and open enrollment. So you can actually graduate from high school with pretty much a 2-year degree. And it's been very successful. I think that is a great plan and a way of actually helping children lower the cost of a college education. We should do more of that because we have the ability to do that. There's been many different people try to stand in the way of that program, but it's a great program. And the stats
What's
show
it called?
Dual enrollment.
Okay.
Dual enrollment, so you can actually take college courses while you're still in high school.
I actually did that. I graduated. I went to both public and private, but I went to. I graduated from a public high school, which I guess now that would be called a magnet school, but a school without walls in D.C. And I was able to take classes at GW. And transfer some of the credits when I went to William & Mary's. But they also counted as college credits because they had an arrangement with the school and all. So it was a fantastic program.
And we've got some pushback, frankly, from some of the community colleges who think there's a threat but I don't see there's a threat to their enrollment. I think if we partner together, there's nobody that loses from this. And particularly at-risk children, the stats on this are overwhelming. If an at-risk child is able to do a dual enrollment and get at least a 2-year degree, their pathway in life is so much better. Their opportunities for jobs.
Economically at risk in that point?
Economically at risk, then their pathway for success and their odds for success go up dramatically.
And those community college classes, would they be free?
There's different options for them now. There's a number of aids, and some of them are free. Some of them you would have to pay. It depends on what kind of a school it would be. Like, for instance, Rock Ridge, they have an amazing performing arts program. So it depends on what they would specialize in and what community college perhaps they would have to partner with. Because in some cases there might be some expenses. But frankly, I think there's ways of making it extremely low cost if there is a fee. And again, we have a 2+2 program that's very successful in this area, where you can go 2 years to Nova, and then 2 years at George Mason or UVA or Tech. That's another great way of lowering the cost of college education. This, I believe, getting the college credits before you're even out of high school, if you can do it, why not do it? Because it lowers the cost, and also one of our issues is making sure people get out of our 4-year schools in Virginia in 4 years. Because if they take 6 or 7 years, that drives up the expense.
4 years used to be the norm.
Yeah,
but now everybody seems to go 6 or more.
I mean, that's a problem because,
my daughter just graduated from UVA, and she could have graduated a little bit sooner, but she loved it there so much, and she had to take the Civil War class, and energy maths.
Saturday night party class.
And just be there. It's very sad that she's
John, when I was a puppy trying to get into colleges and so forth, there were all sorts of scholarships and grants, but the price of education was nothing like it is today. Is there anything that the General Assembly can do or is proposed to do that would deal with the fact that many people just can't find the way to go to school? My parents, they didn't go past high school. Nobody in my neighborhood did. But there was the National Defense Education Act. There were these scholarships. There were these grants. Governor Rockefeller believed in certain kinds of scholarships as well. And I always felt beholden to him because I thought he leapfrogged me out of my neighborhood. And but I don't see, what I see is you have students carrying debt $250,000 and more into advanced ages, which is affecting whether they get advanced education or not. And we're losing an innovative resource, which in the information age allows us to compete. And I know you know all of that, but is there at the bottom some way to help these students get into school and pay reasonable rates?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are things we can do, and there's things we are doing, because we're tying Virginia money that comes from the General Assembly to schools based on their cost containment, because I think that's important. They need to keep the costs down, and frankly, I think they need to look. Look, my son's a graduate from UVA, and we have wonderful universities in Virginia. And I don't want to make university life harsh, but I think we need to make it not too lush either, because we can.
It's a lot different from when we went to college.
It certainly is.
It is so plush compared to when we went.
And I,
you didn't see the house my daughter just moved out of.
A couple of years back, I went back and visited my cinder block dorm, still there, and I
Nobody
loved
else is in it.
My freshman year cinder block dorm. No, it's still working. Everything's fine. But I mean, when you look at some of the newer stuff that they're putting up today, forget about it. I mean,
well, and we're evolving to a different model, so it's the infrastructure costs.
Kids can't afford
really
it now.
Well, our schools, their pitch is that they need to do those things to compete for the best students, because if the place doesn't look nice, students won't want to go there.
Yeah.
But I think that we need to balance that with the cost, because if we grow infrastructure to the point where cost is prohibitive, we're making it to where people don't have a pathway. But I really believe cost containment is one issue. I think we also really need to further the 2+2 programs, further dual enrollment, because those are ways of lowering the cost of a college education. I also believe that, and this one may not be popular with everybody, we need to be more honest with students about their job prospects in the degree that they choose. While I don't want to force people to take a degree, I think getting $300,000 worth of debt in a degree that no one can get a job in is irresponsible if we don't counsel that student on that while they're in school. I think we should. Right now we have 30,000 cybersecurity jobs in Virginia that are unfilled. The average starting salary for those jobs is above $80,000.
30,000.
30,000. If we want to compete for that industry in the future, we need to fill those jobs. And I think we need to be honest with our students that there's great prospects in that area.
What about allowing public school students to have vouchers to be able to take their, sorry, John.
This is instead of your tax pledge,
to go get that training, to take that money and go get that training along with a high school degree. What's wrong with that?
Well, if you're talking about if it would not take away money from our public schools, we actually already have programs with our community colleges for cybersecurity certifications. It's not necessarily geared towards high school students, but I think they would qualify. It's really geared for people who are in the workforce now and realize they need to get a different degree, a different skill set.
It could be both. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
18-years have a head start on a lot of the computer stuff
Well,
anyway.
it's just like
I believe
vocational.
that'd be a
It's
worthwhile
high-tech
investment.
vocational
Yeah.
education, which we do.
I mean,
Right?
I-
Maybe we just don't do it enough.
More, but I'm saying with all of these, they'd have to be certified perhaps, but the places that are offering it now, and it would be prohibitively expensive to bring them all into the schools that we have. They're already set up, they're already offering training, and it doesn't necessarily have to cost the public schools money, because if it costs the public schools X amount to educate a student, and they can still keep part of that amount, but the student's no longer there, the public school comes out ahead, then the rest of the money can go with the student to something that might be better for them long term.
I mean, we have avenues for that now, but I think, frankly, getting more students geared towards those areas where we really need the jobs, and if we don't fill those jobs, those companies will move those jobs outside of Virginia. We need to find a way to fill them. And the other part of this, which is slightly different, I think we have to look at, we've had a lot of discussions about this in the General Assembly. Do we count computer coding classes as a foreign language credit? Because in many cases,
I like that.
I mean, it's believe it or not, in many cases the student schedules are so full they can't take the foreign language and the computer coding at the same time, so they're choosing one or the other, or they're trying to
choose foreign language.
There was a school district in the paper the other day, and it was outside of Virginia, but they were talking about how horrible it was that they were underfunded, and they talked about the crowding in their astronomy class. I loved astronomy class, but if I didn't have it, I don't have it in high school, had it in college. So when I don't mean to sound like an old man, get off my lawn, but we didn't have, I don't think you guys had these things in high school either. No. But if you have a difficult time paying for reading, writing, and arithmetic, and these folks were saying that it was so bad that they had to crowd the high school astronomy class, I'm not sure that they're spending their money wisely.
A gut course, you mean?
Well, you know what? This is a really good conversation.
I mean, if you're not serious, like
I
like astronomy, but if you can't afford the arithmetic,
we all love astronomy. Let me turn to John Bell because we would like you to do kind of a review of the session this year, real quick, and then we'll kind of get into the local political candidates before our time runs out.
Sure. The thing we started off the session with is the most compelling one was we had a budget shortfall. Virginia, we do 2-year budgets, so in the even year, we did the budgets based on the best projections, particularly for that second year, and the projections came in short by $1.2 billion. So we have to have a balanced budget here. So the first thing we had to do is decide where to make those cuts, and there were a lot of difficult decisions, and frankly, I think they were worked really on a bipartisan basis because there were probably things that got cut from both parties neither one of us liked. For instance, the blanket decision was made not to fill any open judge positions. We have one in Loudoun and one in Prince William, 2 high growth areas. I really want those filled. All my Republican colleagues from the area did too. We couldn't get it done, but we realized tough choices had to be made. I am very happy we were able to do some really good things that did cost more money, that required more shifting, but were critical. One, we gave our state troopers a pay raise, a 6% pay raise, and we upped the starting salary for a state trooper, $43,000. Still not a big salary. It's about a $6,000 increase. I did a ride along with one of our honored state troopers back in December, Mike Middleton, and Officer Middleton was one of the first responders to the Pentagon in 9/11. He's actually been on death's door on duty 3 times in his career. And in the week that I rode with him,
unsung heroes, I think.
Amazing heroes. Every day when they get out of their car, they don't know what they're getting into. I watched him as he got out of the patrol car and he'd walk up on a couple of traffic stops and he would touch the rear of the car with his hand. And I said, "Why do you touch the rear of the car?" He said, "I want to make sure my DNA print is on that car. So in case if they shoot me, they know I was there." So that's what they're facing, that's what they're thinking about. So paying our troopers a fair wage is critical. I'm glad we were able to do that. And we're also losing a lot of troopers. The week I rode with Officer Middleton, we actually lost 2 troopers from his patrol area to Texas for $20,000 pay raises to a lower cost area. So if we don't do that, we're losing our investment. Those were 10-year officers, so a lot of experience was lost. So
it was so much of the media villainizing the police. That also is probably hurting recruitment. So maybe if the media could act more responsible.
Yeah, I mean,
And others.
I mean, I wish that
Other politicians
there are
and such.
some bad actors out there, but I believe they're the very small minority.
Right,
you
but
know?
the media and
and-
politicians pounce on those bad apples and and really just tar the police.
Shooting a
with
black
terrible
person
brush.
It's 'cause
without
the
cause is
the
not-
bad apples do some serious
Shooting
bad
a black
stuff.
person without cause is not just an inflammation unnecessarily
How
of
many
media.
people? How many police officers in the country do you believe fall into that definition?
I know there's a large bias in the police department that I'm glad to hear police departments are trying to organize and to resist and to raise consciousness. And we have a lot of people that have never been exposed to violence in their life become police officers. We have people returning from war zones that need adjustments that local stations can't always provide.
Can we
So we
agree
have,
that
it is
99%
not
of them
so
are
simple as
doing a
to
good
say
job?
media is making this up. Black Lives Matter is a fair response to stuff we see on video in which, because a person is black, there appears to be no other explanation for the abuse that they suffer. And contempt of cop is not an offense that's recognizable. And
Can
shooting a
we
person
agree
without
that
cause is not.
99 or approximately 99%.
I don't know what the
of police
percentage is,
are
but
doing a good
1%,
job
1%
and
is
putting their
not
lives at
enough.
risk?
It's like dropping a match in a room that's combustible. We cannot have it. Our goal has to be zero tolerance for intolerance. There's
I
no
think our
question
goal
about
also
it.
has to be to recognize the huge percentage of police officers who are doing a fantastic
you
job.
know,
every
Well,
day.
that doesn't get us
Yeah.
anywhere.
Well,
I'm sorry
let
to
me
I
say.
think it does. It helps. I mean,
No,
we're
it
talking
does
about
not.
the problems with recruitment.
Maybe people take it
but
for
we're talking-
granted that.
Well,
you know
let
what I
me
mean?
say
That
something on
maybe
this.
it does need to be highlighted more
it-
because, as John said, it's a
we-
a scary as hell job, and it's
It's a tough-
incredibly important to our rule of law society.
Yeah, it is a tough job. I sat on the Militia Police and Public Safety Subcommittee. We hear a lot of issues related to this. That I did the ride along with Virginia State Police I mentioned. I also did one in August in Sterling, which is probably the highest crime area in my district. I did a 7 to 7 shift with Loudoun County Sheriffs from 8 o'clock till 5:30 in the morning. It was constant. And they're walking into an amazing amount of situations with all kinds of harm. I'll tell you, I believe it's well over 99%. I will say that. I believe most of our officers are honest people. They work hard. They take great offense when somebody does the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we can get to the point where we do more videotaping because they like that. They want the body cams.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, they
do.
want the body cams because then
it to be
unfortunately
clear.
it's expensive. We need more people on the district attorney side. I actually spent a full day with Jim Plowman, and we looked over a lot of different things from his perspective in Loudoun County. And the issue is for every one of those cameras, you need someone from the Commonwealth's attorney side to look at the data, and a lot of it is you have to filter through to get the stuff that actually would pertain to a situation. So it's expensive. So we have to get to the point where we can do that. But I think most of our officers are great. But all the officers that you could argue, they acted differently because I was with them. Well, I think that you can tell what they're doing is natural. They care. They didn't arrest anybody unless they had to arrest somebody, and they treated everyone with respect and
Those
dignity.
Loudoun County sheriffs are really great. They
Yeah, I
are
was so
well
impressed.
trained.
So impressed.
Well, we could buy ourselves more insurance in this area if we had civilian review boards, because then there's no conflict in this sense. A Commonwealth attorney has to deal in Virginia with the other constitutional officer. In most counties, that's a sheriff. And the appearance of a conflict is enough to undermine the public trust. And the public trust is at a low level when from the highest reaches of government down to the street, we have people ignoring Constitution laws, rules of practice, and fair play. And it's almost epidemic, and I don't blame it on this president. I think he took advantage of it. But I think it's been a problem ever since 9/11, that we've had a deteriorating respect for the most important guides that we have for proper conduct in a civilized society. And we have to work on all fronts. I'm not going to say cops are bad and the protesters are right and so forth. And one of the reasons that we even have that conflict is because each of these incidents involves, even on tape, people who are visibly choking and killing somebody in Staten Island, and no prosecution arises out of it, and the person runs for Congress. That is the wrong image for a country of laws, not of men. And so
Right,
we have a
guys.
very serious problem, and we may be lucky in Northern Virginia because of high income, close attention, and a diverse population that is tolerated better than it is perhaps even south of the Rappahannock.
Okay, let's go to the races. We've got a primary coming up on June 13th. We've got multiple candidates on both sides. Jim, why don't you tell us about the Republican slate, and if you want to voice any opinions on it, feel
Sure.
free.
I haven't endorsed any candidates. I run the Northern Virginia Republican PAC, and we've been just out there supporting Republicans. You have Ed Gillespie, Corey Stewart, and Frank Wagner all running. The most recent polls show Ed Gillespie ahead, but a huge number of undecided, so it's going to come down to turnout. They've been running a pretty vigorous campaign. And the primary is June 13th at your normal local polling place, and you can get a Republican ballot or you can get a Democratic ballot. And I suspect we'll be talking about those candidates in a minute. So basically, it's a very, very important race because it's an off-year election, not for us, but for the rest of the country. They'll be looking at us as one of the few things on the ballot in November. And I know the Democratic Party has sort of become a surrogate for the Clinton-Sanders folks fighting amongst each other. It's in Virginia. You have a lot of support within the Republican Party for President Trump, but not all of Trump's people. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
What you have is
he didn't win the primary, so that's why I said
like you see nationally, it's like something like 98% of Republicans are supporting Trump, which is what keeps his numbers in the 40s.
Who did that poll?
In the 40s.
You're talking about
this is pretty standard.
Virginia Republicans,
it's pretty
98%?
Nationally, it is ridiculously high numbers in a good way that Republicans have rallied around the president. I think you'll see that the more that the Democrats attack him, you get this, well, hey, he's our guy, people rally around him. So I suspect he's more popular now in fact, I know it from talking with people. Before he got the nomination and after he got the nomination, there was a huge jump in his popularity, and once he won, the Never Trumpers are pretty silent. They're just sitting there waiting for an opportunity.
Not now.
They may not be. They may be talking to you, but they're not coming.
I'm listening to them on multiple programs.
Well, that's because the media has found a half a dozen of them and puts them on rotation all the time in order to tear down President Trump.
All right, John.
I just imagine the Republicans are just clicking their little heels together, and then magically this fantasy arises that he is a common man like every autocrat before him who hypnotizes himself into believing he's such a popular leader when he stacks these little things out of town to foment the kind of trust for this criminal in formation. Day by day, we watch him commit a crime, obstruction, and then cover it up.
He won, isn't it?
Yeah.
John,
Well,
you just can't believe he won.
I can't believe that the Russians lying in our election, infiltrating
and
our
those Russians
election,
were
had any difference
smart.
at all.
I mean, the way they were able to convince Hillary Clinton to not campaign in Wisconsin, they are fantastic at consulting.
Well, I think Comey is the most crazy example of karma I've ever seen. On the one hand, he kills Hillary, and then he comes back and he may yet kill Trump. So he will eliminate the two candidates that were running for president so we can get Pence or...
But he will always get attention for himself.
Now, returning to our race and...
It's
Somehow,
amazing how
he's always there.
It's amazing.
He's Forrest Gump.
I just have to have a
No,
timeout
he's
on
not
that.
Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump had empathy.
Forrest Gump had
Forrest Gump had empathy. That was the whole story.
Team.
Read John McCain's essay on Comey in Time magazine. Okay? That was right before he got fired. Anyway, I really get upset about changing reality when it suits you. Anyway.
No, he does tend to pop
discuss...
up. I mean, he keeps having press conferences, and sometimes they're good for Republicans, sometimes they're bad for Republicans. But
I don't think
perhaps he's telling
this
the
didn't
truth.
happen before.
All right,
I don't remember other FBI directors doing this all the time.
Okay, I'll make it brief. The way I see the state race is that whoever comes out, and we have two very good candidates. I'm for Northam, and I'm for Susan Platt. And I believe they're good candidates, but the candidates that they're running against are extraordinary too. Yeah. And I think the Democrats have a feast of capability, whatever comes out of the June 13th primary. And the issue in the general election is going to be Medicaid and education and jobs, but it's also going to be you supported and you continue to support this president who is compromising us, a high-tech community that depends on foreign trade, to have the standard of living that gives us an opportunity and even has 35,000 open jobs in a high-tech community in the information age. That's astonishing. And you're going to compromise that by having a governor who would allow the things that the incumbent governor, the Democratic governor, prevented, that would have made us the laughingstock of America and would have compromised the citizens' rights on a whole variety of issues which were driven by intolerance in some parts, and a lack of concern for the poor, the middle class, the working people that they say that they care about. So I believe that the key to this election is talking about Trump as translated by all the representatives of the General Assembly, plus what they did in the General Assembly that meets that pattern, and the record of accomplishment of the Democrats, including our own local Attorney General.
You're wanting them to focus purely on the policy choices that are being made and how they're affecting the citizens of Virginia, as opposed to the rest of the
well, I think corruption is never good. Corruption is never good.
But you're just saying for this election,
our
focusing on
election.
those policy choices, you think is a winner for the Democrats.
People come out in an off-year election for two reasons. They're hurt or they're energized for the candidates. I think we have reasons for both of those impulses to vote. Okay. And when we have capable people like John here who have content rich, who know the issues, who care about the people, and who can credibly dissect an issue and propose something that is understandable, logical, and good for the people.
He's fantastic at
yes,
that.
I'm so
I love
glad you were
having
here,
him on
John.
the show.
So now that you've been praised, John, it's your turn.
Let's go to your perspective on what's going to happen this year, what you'd like to see happen, and what do you think some of the forces that are going to be acting on this race?
Well, I mean, I think first I'd like to see a big turnout. And I say that not just because big turnouts are usually good for Democrats. I think our democracy needs good turnouts. You know, I think it's a shame to see, you know, in a presidential race, 70-80% of the voters come out to vote, and it drops down to the 40-50 range for a governor's race. And then the off year, the Senate delegate, we're talking 20-30%. So 2 out of 3 people in that race are deciding what, you know, the 10 out of 10 get.
Yes.
So I believe we need to all participate in our democracy. So I hope, regardless of which side you vote on, you go vote, because that's important. It's worth it. It only takes a few minutes. That's a challenge in my district because people have the long commutes. It's difficult to get home to get children. But you can
Is there early voting for the primary?
There absolutely is.
But it's not called early voting. They make a big deal out of that. It's absentee vote. You can do absentee voting in person.
Okay.
Yeah, and you
But
also
you have to have a reason. There's a list of reasons.
Yeah, there's 12 reasons.
I had to do that last.
Yeah, and you can also get you can have a mail-in ballot if you qualify for that as well. You just need to request that. And again, these take minutes to do, but our democracy's dependent upon it. So I believe turnout's going to be a big issue, and I believe that basically for Democrats, our choice is we need to be the firewall, you know, that stops Republicans from making Virginia into North Carolina. Because
I'd just like to make Virginia great again.
Virginia is great. It's great right now, and it has been great. You know, I would say we've been great the whole time.
Thanks to the Republican legislature, it has held off some of the egregious.
The Republican legislature talks about they're all about economic prosperity and things, but yet they wanted to pass things that would take away freedom from women in the reproductive rights. They also wanted to pass many pieces of legislation that would kill our economy. Discriminatory pieces of legislation that have destroyed North Carolina's economy to tunes of about $4 billion.
Like what? What's the?
Well, LGBT discrimination. You know, allowing businesses to openly discriminate someone because of their sexual preference. You know, this is not America. It's not Virginia. If we want to have high-tech companies come to Virginia, then people need to know Virginia treats everybody well. We treat everybody right. You know, I served in the military, and one of the reasons why was to make sure every American gets treated fairly. And it bothers me when we discriminate against anybody. Yeah. You know, and when we promote those kind of policies, if it wasn't for Governor McAuliffe and vetoing 120 pieces of legislation, those things would be law right now. So when you go vote, what
would be law right now?
Well, we would have the LGBT discrimination.
Oh, okay.
You're mischaracterizing a lot of those bills.
No, I absolutely am not. Over the past couple of years, there have been many of them. This past year was the censorship bill. That would have been the first of its kind in America, where many classics would have been taken out of schools. If you read
based on what?
Based on an arbitrary decision.
Well, local school boards make rate decisions on curriculum all the time.
And that was one of the reasons why I voted against it, because there's already mechanisms in place for local school boards, if there is an objection to a piece of literature that's being studied, to deal with that and offer alternatives. I didn't think we needed to come in and have a statewide law on that. But I believe it's important. I'm endorsing Ralph Northam, but Tom Perriello is also a very good candidate, and I'm also endorsing Justin Fairfax. So I differ with my friend on that one, and of course Mark Herring, our Attorney General, who's my good friend. I believe it will be a vigorous race this year. I think the nation will be looking. I do think turnout will be higher than normal. And I will have a tough race myself, and I'm sure many of the Trump issues are going to be playing in my race, because my opponent was the man at the microphone who nominated Donald Trump at the Republican National Convention. And frankly, I'm curious to see how he feels.
Who's your opponent?
My opponent's name is Sue Bacala. And I'm interested to see how he feels about H-1B visas, since he got one and came to America on one. And does he support President Trump's policy getting rid of them? Because I think that'd be damaging.
I don't
for
believe he wants to get rid of them.
Oh, that's what he wants to do.
don't believe he
he
wants to eliminate
said he
them.
wants to make keep all these jobs in America. But what happens if we can't fill the jobs? Then we lose them. We lose them to other
You're
countries.
greatly simplifying the issue.
I don't think so. I believe it's another form of discrimination. You know, the Muslim ban,
no,
all these
it's
things
certainly
are
not
just
a
another
form
form
of
of discriminating.
And
it's very short-sighted.
Not to end on a low note, guys. But I just
seeking out
want to
certain
say,
skilled visas.
I just want to say,
I think I'm changing districts.
the
I'm moving over to his district. I have to ask Holly how she thinks about that, because we have Delegate LaRock, who is the most bizarre, horrible, intolerant Christian you'd ever want to meet.
He's a great American.
He is not a, well,
He
if
is
he's a
not
great
a-
American,
he-
if he's a great American, we live in a
Can I
dystopic
just
society.
say,
You
I
are not
really
telling-
want to
You want to close?
I
Is that
really
what
want
you're
to
the
saying?
stuff
go.
you
We
said
have
was
to
wrong
in 2 minutes, but I wanted to say I've really been laughing at the TV advertisements of Ralph Northam and Tom Perriello. And Ralph Northam, just this gentle doctor, just coming right out and saying that Trump's a narcissistic maniac.
Absolutely.
I mean, I was like,
hold on.
whoa.
That is, I gotta say, guys, I gotta say, all kidding aside, it's
Yep.
almost sad to watch that commercial.
Oh, how
because
is- you're sad because it's effective,
you
I
guys,
guess.
you guys know him better than I do. That's not his personality at the end. That is a guy trying to be Perriello.
No, the content is right. The content is right no
It's
matter who his
sad.
opponent is, whether it was in a general election. We have a narcissistic tyrant.
It's a
or whatever
consultant
he's-
saying you got to say this to convince the
I don't
Sanders
know.
people that you're okay.
I think Ralph is pretty sincere, and I mean, if
Yeah.
you know anything about Ralph, you know,
He never
I think he's a
seemed to
very
be like
sincere
that.
person.
He's very
Oh,
sincere.
actually, I've known him for a long time, and he's
language
always
is
spoken.
his?
Oh, he's always spoken his honest truth, and I believe that's his honest truth. I mean, and President Trump even says himself, he
As
can't
a
go, he can't bring
narcissistic
himself.
maniac?
Well, Trump can't even go to confession because he can't bring himself to do that. I mean,
Say, "I'm sorry."
this is
Mea culpa,
Wait,
mea culpa,
that's not
never,
what-
never.
So I just want to say
mischaracterizing
also
it.
that Tom Perriello, who was a high official in the State Department, did a great job at the Quadrennial Review of Defense or Diplomacy and Development, and then became the special envoy to, I think, West Africa. Just two amazing choices, and then we've got 3 running for lieutenant governor who are on this show, who are also really good choices. So we should probably mention Jean.
Rossi.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Susan Platt, Jean Rossi, and Justin Fairfax are running for lieutenant governor. So make sure you vote in the primary on June 13th. And thanks for joining us for the June edition of The Road to. We'll see you next month.